this all comes down to mental health. And this all comes down to personal choice. This all comes down to libertarian ideals operating within a shitty capitalistic system, operating within an ideal free market kind of economy concept, whatever that is. Listen, I have no problem with capitalism. It's great. It's just, I'd say, late stage, unfettered rollaway capitalism where the lower are getting taxed more than the upper. That's absurdity. There should be a scale. If anybody argues against that, they're just greedy. Listen, there comes a point in everyone's life, whether it's at the end or at the beginning, you got to let all of this stuff go. So regardless of the stuff that you have, imagine being on a deathbed and you got 100 houses in the world. Which one are you going to be in, right? You can only be in one room at a time as well, and you can only be driving one car at a time. So you find yourself where you are, wherever that may be. And in the end of it, you don't want to end up like my dad with a storage unit full of junk with unfulfilled dreams, and a broken-hearted kid. And I'll be clear, I'm not ever, you'll never hear me record it, telling anybody that they need to eat mushrooms, that they need to try ayahuasca, they need to try DMT. It is not my place to tell you or anybody else on this planet what's good for them. It's not my place. However, it's my obligation to tell you my experiences. And from those, and in any question or conversation that you may have moving forward, I hope that you're a little better prepared, a little more knowledgeable, a little more open-minded, and you move forward from there. So I'm not here to argue in any sense of position, hierarchy, or anything like that. I am just here to share my experiences, the experiences I've shared with others, and more importantly, these are all experiences. These come from the heart. I believe in both the heart and the mind. So we've got the feelings, the symbiotic, representing sort of like how this all fits in, meaning, purpose, values, these things that are definitely more right brain thinking, but the data is hyper important here. That's why I think a lot of the early episodes moving forward are going to be focused on the actual clinical studies. Stories are great, and everybody's going to have those stories, but under scrutiny and observation from professionals who have been paid to do so in environments that are repeatable. And believe me, I think they can improve on technique and setting. Those things can certainly be improved upon. But hey, listen, all things being equal, testing the pharma drugs versus, let's say, psilocybin compounds head to head in the same conditions is awesome. However, I think those who know would fully agree that the clinical box, like I think most geometric places, the more geometric, the more difficult the trip can sometimes be. The more complicated and geometric it can be. So sometimes boxed rooms are super sterile. It could be the lighting as well. Like when you're in a heightened state of taking in stimulus, you're in a heightened state of taking in stimulus, you actually start transmitting and receiving kind of higher different wavelengths, right? So you're floating, you're vibrating in different kind of frequencies. So you're transmitting, you're receiving. The environment around you is super important because you'll be hyper aware of whatever it is you're in, right? You'll be hyper aware of the existence and kind of the qualities of that room. The clinical room is just that it's devoid of any decent stimulation. So you're kind of stuck in headspace, which, listen, headspace is different than location. They correlate, but they can be totally different things. I found people that can be in terrible situations in great headspace, and then people in great situations in terrible headspace, right? So there's a correlation. I think what we try to do in clinical trials is get everybody in the same kind of situation, which isn't truly an ideal peak state to experience some of these drugs in. So it's kind of a muted state. So, but we understand, okay, that's why they're doing this. But it's these studies, the studies that involve the heart out of the consequence, right? The actual behavioral, and then, how would you say, stories told by the experiencer, the whole kind of package that formulates after, and the transformation that's seen behaviorally, but more importantly, understood internally by the person doing so. That's almost as separate as the box or the location, right? It's like, what do you get out of it? I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I'll do it in like a philosophical framework. I'll give you a really shitty place. Actually, I'll give you a really good place, and I'll give you a really shitty place. And I'll tell you what you'll pick up on, and why it's set in settings important, and then why that clinical study is kind of like smack dab in the middle. So if the most ideal place, in my experience, doing any type of psychedelic is somewhere where you're safe in nature. So however you can get to those two things, right? Safe, nature. Those two things. So for me, safe in nature typically involves some kind of camp away from people in a space where I can see stars, trees. So I'm immersed, right? I'm immersed in a place that I love, I'm comfortable in, I'm safe in. And so being an avid backpacker and hiker and camper and car camper and just loving getting out, I honestly feel safer, like on the side of a mountain with a campfire, than I do probably anywhere. Especially if there's fishing nearby. So that's an ideal location. I'd say probably, philosophical arguments are like, what would be a terrible place? Okay, a terrible place for someone to try mushrooms the first time would be a vegan in literally a butcher shop. That's probably the most nightmarish kind of scenario, right? To kind of just imagine like the horror involved in that experience, right? It's just same drugs, same person. One is in a forest, one's in a forest feeling safe. And by the way, I'm a hunter, not a vegan myself. I was postulating like a nightmare scenario for someone who would be, and I can see why that would be. I gave up meat for a number of years when I lived in Santa Cruz. Honestly, it didn't work for me for reasons, but hey, I know what it's like. So anyways, yeah, so same person, same setting could have wildly different responses just from the stimuli in the environment, right? However, like I said, disciplined, people who are disciplined in that sense, they certainly could, honestly, that could be like a Jedi test, right? A vegan can go, okay, I can be in any environment, right? This would be like a torture test. But again, could you be in headspace, right? So what mushrooms, what one layer of mushrooms allow you to see is how other people see stuff objectively. It's really strange. So everybody sees things from their own perspective, but sometimes with mushrooms, you can see other people's perspectives on things. And so sometimes it can open up windows and doors of understanding just by jumping out of our own heads and seeing different perspectives. And so I think that's what's really healthy about it. But here's the thing. When you see different perspectives, sometimes you see other people, you see yourself through other people's eyes. And really, you could jump into their perception of you. And sometimes that does feel uncomfortable. And you do get to understand things that you may have known under the surface, but it just comes out and then it's like right in your face. Like, well, the reason why this person acted this way to you is because they were responding you didn't know it, but this is how they felt. And you're like, oh, geez, wow. I misread that situation, either good, positive, there's sometimes, I guess what I'm just saying is like anything, we perspective can be gained, and I found it's sort of I would say disassociation for sure, but that's a negative term. I think it's expanded expanded consciousness would be a better term for it. And in a world such as ours, I think we all need a change of perspective just a little bit, right? Just to give us a little reality check into our own perceptions, right? It's easy. It's become easy to hide in our COVID holes and not interact with people different than ourselves. And I think what we're looking at is it's kind of like a bunch of preschoolers again, looking at each other with new classes. Everybody's kind of reset their location, and it's like trying to get back in, and everybody's just dislocated. A lot of people are scared, stretched thin, but it's like kind of a new world. And it's like, how does everybody interact again? It seems like, we kind of knew how to do it before COVID. And then all of that kind of knowing is now turned into a lot of just isolation. And I think just perhaps not knowing where we're supposed to go in many ways. But I digress. Let's summarize just quickly the last couple of minutes. We know that the current pharma model is not to cure problems, not to solve problems, right? And drugs that actually are effective just aren't part of their repertoire. It just doesn't make sense to them, which is totally fine. It's just, you got to understand this, right? And if anybody from pharma, like if you have a good pharma company and you're like, no, dude, you're so wrong. Like, dude, please come on and tell me how my model or how my perceptions of your company is different. And, please enlighten me. I would really enjoy for somebody to set me straight, right? And really tell me how I missed the ball on what the true intentions of the pharma industry are. I'm sure I'll get some PR individuals if you ever were to come out, but there's no incentive. Listen, I got 0 subscribers, bro. Do I care? No. Why? The message is important. The message of why we're doing what we're doing is important. It's going to resonate. It may resonate with 1. It may resonate with 10. Overall, that 1, that 10, that's what's important. That's it. Like, that is it. Right? So, listen, I want to give people the permission, right? Like, this is bizarre. I've been a rule breaker my entire life. Like, when I say rule breaker, some things just don't make sense in this world, right? Some rules just don't make sense. Sometimes the rules don't make sense. I'll give you a perfect example. You're driving in a desert and literally there's no roads. And you're driving, there's no roads, and you come across a stop sign in the middle of the desert. Do you stop? The answer is actually really important. Most people will stop, even if it's absurd, right? You who are listening to this, you had an answer. A lot of you said you'd stop. I guarantee it. Maybe you slow stop. Maybe you kind of... But I guess the thing is do you honor the symbol in an absurd situation, right? Because it's there. And so this is the same fundamental problem that Jesus had with the Pharisee. He said, you follow all the rules. You just don't know what they mean, right? And so followers of the rules, let's just say that some guy in a ghillie suit hidden looks like a bush. You can't tell he's there, but he's there to witness if you stop or not, right? Like, would that change your mind? Like, you're not in danger of hitting him or anything. Let's say he's just hidden in the rocks with binoculars, right? So if you knew there was a witness, would that change? Would that change the question if you'd stop or not if you knew there were people watching? And is that relevant in reality, right? So again, there's more societal pressure on you now. Somebody's watching you, right? You don't know it. This first one you don't know, but the second one you do know. Second one, you have a guy in a uniform in the middle of nowhere, right? And as you approach, you see this guy standing next to a stop sign. And do you stop then? Now that there's an authority figure next to a command, right? So the more people that are watching, the more witnesses, the more people that are there, the more pressure. Now, eventually, if there's buildings and there's roads and stuff like that, rebellion makes no sense, right? Because now it makes sense, right? So now you got a uniformed guy next to a stop sign with a cross, in a cross section. You're on a road at this point. Now all of these things, all these societal pressures, now it makes sense, right? Now I think we all have a point on that kind of decision tree on when it's either absurd to stop or it makes sense, right? And I think we all have those lines, right? And we all cross those lines every day on what is acceptable to cross the line and what's not, right? And so, some people that I know, which I respect highly, they would have never tried marijuana if it was illegal. Why? They have such a respect for the law that they don't cross those lines. They respect the institution. They believe in the system, right? They believe that it's a thing, that they believe that the reasons that got them to those decisions are good enough and they shouldn't be questioned, and that's the law, that's the rules, right? I think there's others that, especially my generation, when, we had the Nancy Reagan message, when we discovered that she was full of shit on a number of products, the whole system fell apart, right? Like when you say everything's bad and you find out things aren't bad, then you have to question all of the things, right? You're responsible for questioning all the things because, alcohol is fully acceptable in that time frame, and underage drinking certainly wasn't frowned upon beyond, do you have a fake ID or not, truthfully. So alcohol was widely regarded as safe and acceptable. Definitely not safe. It was acceptable to consume. When I was a kid, no joke, numerous occasions, friends of mine and myself got pulled over after drinking at a kegger at Shady Lane, south of Chandler, and the cops would drive us home. Now, try that on today. That just doesn't work, right? But that was more normal than a DUI. And it happened numerous occasions. It was a different time period. Now the police, seriously feel like an army, which is absurd. These are all American citizens, but blah, blah, blah. We're not going to dip into that. Not dipping into that. We're going to dip into the good stuff. So this whole story comes back full circle to the Nose Twins and Dave Dick. So we all wanted to obfuscate our identity. They were renting this place. They found no issue with it. Dave talked to them. They had a fake name. We had some sort of payment, and it couldn't have been Sporeworks. We did stuff with Sporeworks later, but I looked at their website. They opened up in '98 October. So this was a year before. So we obtained spores from some other company, who knows what. And I couldn't even tell you the species. I would, if I was a betting man, GTs, bro. Yeah, it had to have been. I mean, I just have my gut telling me, like, one of those intuitions. Um, so Dave Dick figured out how to go visit the cute nose twins every day and get our package, and got the package. And at that point, we had already engineered our basically our first grow tub, so to speak, which was sufficient, not fancy. It was a big cooler. We had inverted 2-liter bottles of soda that were on a loop system, which allowed us to drain them through the cap, just pushed by a humidifier with a pretty gnarly duct tape job. But we had our environment, right? And we did basically vermiculate brown rice flour mix, inoculated jars, let those sit, and then put the kind of the jars themselves and put those into the environment. And so it was around Christmas time that we started getting like serious flushes. And I'll get to that because October is when my nightmare started. During this whole grow process, I was dealing with storage units. I was dealing with junk and stuff that you have to deal with when you're the only child. All right, back to the story. Let's get honest. October. Yeah, that Thursday in October 1997 was the worst day of my life. And it didn't get any better with the amount of booze I was punching through my system. So I mentioned Bukowski and a bunch of these other crazies. You know, sometimes, I don't know, there was a romanticism involved with that type of booze and drink and drugging. And my crew, we all bought into it. We all kind of subscribed, so to speak. But it's really not the healthy way of dealing with things, like drowning yourself in booze and playing the blues and wallowing in that, dropping out of school. It sucked. And, you know, my dad struggled. He didn't leave me with anything per se. But he didn't leave me. From a psychological perspective, I was telling you I was having these nightmares where he'd show up and it got like downright brutal, inappropriate, just felt so unreal. And that being boozed up like that wasn't good. So 2 of my really great friends at the time, and I want to start going with nicknames because I'm going to tell a lot of stories about some people, and I don't want those stories of our youth to get confused with the people that these guys are today. So I got to come up with some nicknames here, and I'll keep with their nicknames. So I have 2 good friends. One of them's nickname is El Jefe. And El Jefe is no longer with us. El Jefe and I were great friends in high school. And I probably laughed with him more than almost anybody on the planet that I've lived with. So he and I, you know, grew up high school together. Had a lot of experiences, a lot of really dangerous moments. But he was a character, example of him being him. You know, when I was in college, I didn't have any money really. And so every once in a while on a Friday, he'd just show up at my house or wherever I was renting from. And he'd show up in a limo. He'd come up to my door. I wouldn't expect him. And he'd give me $100 and say, "We're going out." And we'd go out and he'd pay for everything, but at least I had $100 in case I needed to pay for whatever. And it was just, that was kind of him. And so him and Dougie, the Croatian, this is October 31st, this is Halloween. So Dougie is equally an amazing friend. He's super tall. When he was younger, he was a Massimo model. He's a gorgeous dude. He's like 6'6" or something, 6'5", maybe even taller than that. Played volleyball in high school. Fluent in Croatian. Good looking dude. When I would go out with El Jefe and Dougie, girls would come to us. They weren't there for me. They were there. I mean, Doug would attract women and drinks. He's the only guy I've ever consistently been to the bar with that within 5 minutes of entering the bar, women are buying him drinks. Like he's that good looking. And so we never had problems attracting female talent around us with these two guys around. It was ridiculous. It was comical. So these guys rescue me. This is a weekend near October 31st. And they're like, we got to get you out of town. And, I think I had setting up my dad's estate sale and stuff. Like, we got to get you out of town. We're going to take you to Vegas. I'm like, okay. So I had $240 or $230. And we take off, and we pick up Jeff from his place in Scottsdale, and we head to Las Vegas. This must be a Thursday or probably a Friday night. We get into Vegas pretty late. It was definitely dark before we left. And so, we probably got to Vegas around 8 or 9, maybe a little bit later. Get checked into our hotel. And, I only had $230. These guys had quite a bit more, but we're like, okay, let's, and in truth, like, we were doing a lot of fun stuff at the time, which I don't recommend everybody to do at any time, but we're partying and we decided it's time to go gambling. So we go down into our hotel, and the first 15 minutes in, I had to have been playing 21. I was playing blackjack. I lost $200 like immediately. So I'm down to $30, and we were walking out. I was pissed. I was like, this just sucks. I've been here for 20 minutes and I just lost $200. I'm like, all right, whatever. We're just gonna do this. And so we're walking out, and when we were walking out, there's this like spin wheel thing, and it's like $20 you put in, you spin the thing. And I'm like, well, I have $10, I have a $20 bill. So I said, spin it. So I give him the $20 bill. It spins, hits 100. I'm like, okay. I take the $100. I walk over to roulette. Never played roulette. And I decided, okay, I asked the guys, what do I do? So I take the money, I put it all on black, hits. And this started a process that didn't stop until at least 8 hours later. I mean, I didn't stop winning. I stopped losing altogether. It was absurd what began to unfold at the roulette table. I started putting money on random numbers, and then I started doing this weird dance, and El Jefe and Dougie are like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, 15 and 19. And I'm just like I'm doing this weird stuff. And I'm just like, I'm laughing and I'm stacking up chips. And then the thing spins, and all of a sudden it hits on a corner, or it hits my number. And I'm sitting there going, what the fuck is going on? It doesn't stop. Within an hour, I'm up like $3,000. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So I start giving Dougie and Jeff black chips. Like, here, right? So I'm giving these guys black chips, like, I'm telling them, go get drinks, or like, go do this, go do that. And they're coming back, And yeah, after about an hour or two at this first place, we're just like, all right, we're up big time. And it never stopped. We went to all the big casinos and the same scenario. It got so absurd at the end. It was like so absurd what was happening. We'd go in, and this is at like 6 a.m. We'd go into a new casino, and I'm just like filled. I mean, at this point, we're just filled with black chips and cash, right? Like it's just absolutely amazing. And so I literally got patted down by they asked me, like, can we please pat you down? I'm like, sure, man, you could do whatever you want. And they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure out where I was winning. It was just, it was just absolutely amazing. And so I think at the end of the run at like 8 or 9 in the morning, $17,000 from that 20. So it was absolutely absurd. And the blessing on this, and in truth, they swear, Doug and Jeff, who loved my dad, played golf with them, they thought my dad was manipulating the tables. And honestly, my dad wanted so much from me and wasn't able to do it. I can't not think he wasn't there. And the beautiful thing was I invested, I think, $7,000 into a stock in 1997 called VGenX, Vanguard Energy Fund. And if you look at I invested $7,000 in 1997. And in 2008, I was able to take out a huge down payment on my first house. So in my heart, I feel like, and I think Doug would tell you today, and I'd love to have him on the show, but if Jeff were here, I know for certain he loved telling the story. He says Roger was there, and yeah, it was an absurd Vegas story, absolutely absurd. And I don't gamble anymore. I won. I literally I'm one of the only people I've really met, other than one other, I guess, but I've been to Vegas like dozens of times, right? Like I usually won a little bit. I lost some. Yeah. But this run, this experience, it was like over the top. I told God, I go, there's no reason I'm ever going to try this again. It was, I don't know. It was a perfect run. It was hilarious. And I believe my dad was there. And I think he was laughing his ass off. Those pit bosses certainly weren't laughing. So this is the time period. So we get back from Vegas, that lessened the blow, right? So to speak. But, I still was struggling just with the loss of my dad, right? I mean, Pajerski's, I remember helping me out during that time. Yeah. Belows, my friend. No, that was a difficult time to say the least, but the miracle of it was really the mushrooms during that Christmas time. So, I had to drop out of school that semester. And most of my classes had to wait the following year. But in that gap, I was able to harvest and grow mushrooms successfully for the first time. And it was that Christmas, and my grandma had also died. Well, longer story, but it was that Christmas break over New Year's past Christmas, because my grandmother died Christmas Day, Christmas night, same year, bad year. But what I went through really changed when I had my mushroom crop. And this may sound insane to some people, but I ate mushrooms every day for 2 weeks straight. And I wasn't driving. I was, lived on right off campus. And so everything around me was there. I could walk to everything, friends with cars and stuff like that. But I fully functioned. I woke up, ate mushrooms. I ate a lot of mushrooms at night, went out, and I interacted with everyone. And it was the first sense of peace and calm that I had had. And from an emotional standpoint, it's the only thing that got me through. It's hard to explain. Mushrooms are extremely powerful, but when you allow yourself and when you have enough buffer or peace, whatever that means, or time, and you're safe in the short term, you have 6 months, you're fine, whatever. If you're safe in a certain sense, you can give yourself the space to allow yourself to have these experiences, right? In an open way where there's not time pressure. You have to be somewhere. Like, this is, when you give yourself the time to fully embrace whatever it is you're going through and not have to perform for other people, or, you have to deal with your things head on and you don't have any barriers, right? That's what I'm getting at. I found myself in that space and I was able to truly learn how to medicate myself with the use of these psychedelic mushrooms. That's what I learned. Now, there are rules against that, right? There are rules against that, right? Statute of limitations. May or may not have done these things right, whatever. These are the things that I experienced and how I experienced them. They weren't necessarily the path that the system at that time said is cool, right? Certain elements, like you can buy spores totally legally anywhere. However, there's like lines that are crossed. So it puts, these type of ideas, experiences under context of societal pressure get pushed off, right? My experience was life-changing in a beneficial way. When you come full circle and you come to Colorado to involve yourself in some capacity in this arena, and you find that Colorado is currently open to the big experiment, you find yourself asking the question, have I found my meaning? If I could give the resultant benefit of what I experienced to other people, and they understand, and they end up resonating with this understanding, that's exactly what this is. And I ask you, what would you do if you believed that you had found something that could significantly improve the lives of other people, perhaps even save their lives, would you advocate for that? And I ask you, what lines would you need to cross that you would be comfortable with in order to feel as if you're invited, that you have permission, that you're allowed to make these choices based on your own free will and your own interest in healing or in the possibilities that could exist with these classes of drugs, these classes of products? That's where we are. That is where we are right now. And the epicenter is in Colorado, specifically Denver. Mushroom Mountain, baby. Episode 0 took a couple twists, but in truth, I'd like to dedicate this episode to two people in particular. First one is to my dad. I truly wish you were here. I truly wish you were here in person. I'm about a year younger than you were the day you died. I wouldn't trade what I've learned. If I were given the trolley problem of bringing you back and had you for 25 years, I would have traded it. I would have traded anything. However, I'm not allowed to trade. It's not my place. It's beyond the reality in which I can control. So I would never trade what I've learned. I just received a text message from a mutual friend of El Jefe's of mine, David, who I also intend on having on the show. He and I traveled across the United States of America. I think we hit 30 plus states in 1996, the summer, in a 1976 Buick Skylark. He just texted me and reminded me today is El Jefe's birthday, or would have been 50 years old today, May 17th. 2024. Maybe that's why I've been thinking about you, bro. There's so many stories that you and I experienced that no one will ever get to know about. Some of them, for sure. But yeah, some of it's so freaking bizarre. I don't think people would believe us. But I missed your laughter, man. I really, truly missed your friendship. In the end, the world gets this, bro. And the world, in the end, the world gets us. Ain't no way, shape, or form around it. But it was a pleasure, for sure. And I hope we can interact again someday, bro. So happy birthday. You would have been 50. Whew. Yeah. And just like my dad, who died at 51, died too young. And maybe from the few stories I've already told, maybe figuring out, yeah, there was some hard, fast living in this circle of experience that I grew up in. There's definitely no shortage of stories and excitement. And longevity, that's just something that I didn't think I really had in me, to be truthful. But as I get older, the less I value those dangerous things and the more I do value the quieter things that I avoided and perhaps wasn't exposed to as a kid. Funny how we gravitate towards what we really need, right? But back to the dedication. Two main people for this dedication. There's so many people I'd like to mention, but I think with zero expectation and just the ability to craft a zero chapter, I'd like to dedicate this chapter to two people. First, my dad. That first unit, nicknamed the Jolly Roger. For the past 25 years, 30 years now, nearly 30 years, I would have done anything to get you back, traded anything. But what we've created in the last 11 months is the first thing that makes any sense. And if this can help other people, if what we're doing can help just one more person, then I won't look back and curse the reality that I wish you were around during all this time. But these are the circumstances of this world, right? The separation of people we love that we get to learn down here, but we already get separated from everything else we came from. So we get attached and then we get separated here, and it's just, it is the game, the quality of this world. Now, I wouldn't wish what I experienced on anyone, but since I've experienced it, I'm here to make sense of it. And the only thing that makes sense is what I experienced and the peace and the serenity that I got from those weeks of mushroom overload, really. Just it was, if you're gonna swim, jump in the water. If you want to learn how to swim, jump in an ocean. You'll find out if you can do it or not. You get to shore, you can swim. But what if you find out you jump in the water and you're meant to be in the water? What if you finally found where you make sense and you are immersed in swimming for weeks, and then you make it to shore and you say to yourself, I don't need to swim anymore, but I can walk now. and you can move forward with your life. So these experiences that we have as humans, the ones that really lock us up, the ones that are really life-changing and tragic and stressful, that's where we need the most help. We need people, guides, we need safe passages, we need the permission to allow these experiences to happen. And it makes sense. And at this point, I've already got the one. Everything else is just a bonus. But that's why I'm sharing. Second dedication is Daniel, my business partner, the lead tech engineer for the company. He would be the equivalent of a CTO. We were playing with titles. Neither of us like the moniker or history of C-suite in its current manifestation. So while he would be a CTO in a 150 plus person company, we're coming up with the identity that he best correlates with. And so from a tech side, he's got everything handled. And Daniel and I started, this would be our first project together, would be the Jolly Roger. Later he would go on in 98 to get hired as an intern for a company called AtWeb. AtWeb was acquired by Netscape, which was then acquired by AOL. And in 99, I was interviewing, and I got hired by Netscape division of AOL in 2000, and then moved out to Mountain View and worked with him on AOL Groups, very Me Too product. But the most brilliant, hands down, highest quality, intelligence level, highest concentration of talent of any building or group I had ever come across till then and since then. Top talent from around the world, from different countries, all working together, all of them Ivy League equivalent educations, and then there's me. But we're talking extremely intelligent, high output, shining stars in the tech world at the time, and it was electrifying. So Daniel and I have worked together at that capacity, and then really like 5 or 6 different times in our history. We've worked on smaller projects up to big companies like Canon, Osei Canon together. But anyways, he and I think we're naturally meant to build something together. We found ourselves doing it all too many times, and it comes naturally. And so really from the standpoint of manifesting reality, I'm really glad that he and I have been working together on this the last 11 months. And what it is we'll disclose that. We'll disclose that at the right time. Right now, truly the important stuff is outlining why we're doing these things and, what the reasons were pushing us toward into this, what do you want to call it, segment or this cross-section or this demographic. I don't know this genre, market segment, however you want to describe, the emerging mushroom market. No, just from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate Daniel's position, his ability to balance out and get the things done that we need to get doing. And I am 100% appreciative of his and his family's patience and contributions to the cause. With that, I think episode 0 may be coming to a close. Episode 1, I'm really going to focus on company values. They don't, well, it's an entire episode, and it borders on the esoteric only in the sense that I want people to look at things through different facets when they approach their company values. I want people to look at company values through the lens of a spiritual lens, or a filter of sorts to see if it's balanced. And one way to do that is to look at the individual values within a company and find out where they align in the chakra filter perspective. Because it's interesting in that from that filter perspective, you can discover where those values come from through that lens. And I'll give you an idea. The concept, if you have a concept of, let's say, love, if you were to do some research, you'd find that concept, that value, comes from the heart chakra. And that's really probably one of the easiest ones to correlate, right? Pretty simple to see that love comes from the heart chakra. That's kind of the label. And, this is where research, or even just going into ChatGPT and asking that, big library of automation, like, where does love fit in the spectrum of the filter through the chakra system? And it'll punch out love. So you can take these company values that you think you have, or the concepts, and actually kind of just look at them through the lens of that. You can also look at your values through other lenses. And each time you do so, what you're doing is you're creating a diamond where each perspective you look at gives you a pretty view, so a balanced kind of outcome, so that when you look at something, eventually you're seeing it for all that it could be and can be, because you're looking at it through all the different perspectives, right? So when we talk about product development in general, we can always look at things through different perspectives, and the most important perspective is through the customer's viewpoint. But that can further be broken down into what type of customer that they are. So some customers may resonate with the appearance of something, like an object may have an artistic perspective or a design element to it that is, from the lens of design, very refined, very beautiful, very attractive in terms of appearance, superficial kind of evaluation, right? So that's one lens. Another lens, somebody may not care about what a product actually looks like, as long as the product of that object is what they desire. So, they don't care if it's got pretty paint. In the car scenario, there's people out there that build these crazy vehicles that look like garbage, but that will outperform some of the highest performing commercial cars out there, right? So some kids' sleeper vehicles is a good example. Like the desired out performance is the front seat, and some of these cars don't even have seats, right? Literally sleeper, or even just the opposite, like junkyard phantom cars with Toyota super engines, right? Like my old neighbor used to build. So it depends on what lens people view things, products, and really, to really build anything good in this world, the more perspective you get from your true target audience, the people that you are trying to understand or you're trying to build for, the more input you get from them on what they want and what is important to them, your demographic is going to crystallize, and you're going to able to produce better products for your target, right? True product development, and that's what I truly love about software. If done, stipulation, I love software if it's done in a coherent way, if it's done in an organized, predictable way that's coherent, that is hearing the customer's voice, and the decisions for the product are driven for the benefit of the customer, and there are systems in place in which the customer, their voice is loud and clear, even if it's aggregated through hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of customers. Even though it's aggregated, you are capturing the voice of your customer that improves the product for that customer. There's a way to do this. Software taught me, and all the systems and all the things we experimented with over the last 25 years, we have come up with some really good ways to develop great products in the most efficient way possible. That is ultimately my super training. And it really is fun, honestly, when you have a great product and you're able to listen to your customers and you're able to build a better product for them very quickly, especially in like prototype to production capacities, right? Like there's where the greatest like learning can occur, is where you have either a small group of people that represent the larger group that are influential, that do represent cross sections that you can have regular and updated interactions with, that allow you to listen, create change in a short term, show them that change in a prototype or some kind of capacity that doesn't require a lot of production, manufacturing time, money, or energy, and can continue to improve the product in such a way that by the time you're ready to go to production, whatever that means, you know that the product that you're delivering has been filtered 100, 200 times iteratively through a group of people that you've already determined represent the bigger groups, right? Because every company has niches, and every company that uses things has a different way of using them. There's like groups, nodes, so to speak. So you'll be able to identify what the important things are for all of those nodes, and then through a prioritization system, be able to identify the important stuff, high value, important stuff, and the stuff that can be done quickly. That stuff goes always first, right? So anyways, we will go into depth on that stuff later, but really, truly, thank you. If you've listened to this, I am totally surprised. This is truly a treat for me to like kind of remember and to really document the things that are important to me and why we're doing the things that we're doing. It lets me establish my voice, test my equipment, all that stuff. So if you actually listen to episode 0, thank you. I appreciate that. I am so green to this. Any type of input is going to be good input. So yeah, please, if I can do anything better, that's what I'm here for, to improve. We're starting audio only, and just to get that nailed down. I think eventually when we get to product, we start launching products, we'll probably go to video, just because, there's only so much you can show in an audio program. But this program really is intended to begin the Mycelium network with our close associates, and then identifying really outstanding people in the field that can give us more detailed information, so that people tuning in can understand the real data, not just the emotional kind of experiences that other people have. I think both of these things in combination are what we should be looking at as a society, right? Like, again, I'm not advocating for any type of usage, and that's not from a legal standpoint. I just personally, I'm not telling anybody what to do. It's really important that everybody understands that I'm not a Timothy Leary equivalent when it comes to telling people what to do, right? I'm not telling you to drop out. I'm not telling you to drop in. I'm not telling you to follow me or any other people other than from a curiosity standpoint, and possibly as a nexus of information, so that you can make the best quality decisions as a human being that you can make under the laws and the rules of wherever you're coming from. So that's the framework of where we're operating. I wish you the best in this journey, and I'm hoping, and I know that over the next few cycles, we're going to be bringing some valuable information so that you can make good quality decisions. One demographic for me is truly the demographic of people who know nothing, who are starting from a space of, I've heard about mushrooms, I've heard about psychedelics, I've heard about the benefits, these good things, and that's it. I think I'd like to break the barriers so that this type of option is normalized under guided circumstances. I'm a responsible human, I believe. I may not have been most of my life. However, responsibility and wisdom come, and you realize that things are powerful. They should be treated with respect. So I'll end that with this. Thank you for staying tuned. My name is Matthew Flansburg, and this has been Forest Floor, episode 0. Thanks for tuning in.